Welcome to another episode of Mighty Car Mods, proudly supported by Just Car Insurance.
Now today we're coming at you all the way from Singapore, a land of mad mods, mad cars, and today we're going to be teaching you how to install a turbo timer in your pants.
That's right, a turbo timer for a car keeps the car running after you pull the key out. The theory is it lets the car cool down.
Now a lot of people say they're not necessary at all because modern cars that have water-cooled turbos don't need them. That's why factories don't put them in. Other people say it's nothing more than a mad, not in a good mad way, marketing scam.
That's right, but for people who do want to install them, we are going to show you how.
Today we're working on a turbo Mitsubishi Lancer that's owned by Edward, a Mighty Mods fan from Singapore. He's already done a lot of supporting and suspension mods, and like most cars in Singapore, it's clean and tasteful, just like a good tofu burger. We're meeting Edward for the first time and trying to make a good impression and look as professional as we can.
So these are the tools you're going to need. You're going to need some screwdrivers to get your dash apart. It's all pretty basic stuff. You also may need a socket set to get to certain things. You're going to need some heat shrink and some pliers, and most importantly you're going to need a multimeter because you need to figure out what wire does what.
So Edward, thank you so much for letting us use your car today. Tell us, when your Mitsubishi was new here in Singapore, how much would that have cost?
That would be about $90,000.
19, did you say? 19. As in 90?
Yeah.
$90,000.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's insane, but that's part of living in Singapore.
As we found out in our recent documentary about the car scene in Singapore, even basic cars like Evos and WRXs can cost up to $200,000. Mods are also incredibly expensive and highly regulated, with a dedicated special arm of the police, which makes it challenging to own and modify cars in Singapore. Luckily, this doesn't dampen their spirits, and we're hoping our install today won't land us in jail.
Today we're installing this turbo timer. Now in Japan this costs around 10,000 yen. In Australia they're about 160 bucks. Now the whole idea of a turbo timer is you turn the key off, pull it out, and the car keeps running. So there's nothing really more in there than just a relay and a timer circuit. You could build one yourself if you wanted to for less than 10 bucks from parts from a J car or something like this. Now this one has a screen on it as well, and depending on which one you get, it can give you other information like volts, road speed, different things. Today we're just doing a simple install, which is just going to keep the car running when you take the key out. Now it's interesting to note that obviously this is a very Japanese item. There's Japanese characters everywhere, and certainly every car that we've imported from Japan, every single one of them has a turbo timer in them. They're all over Japan. Now I don't want you to think that that straight away legitimizes their use or practicality, because the same people that are putting these in their cars also have Hello Kitty dolls sitting up here, and when they put the brakes on their eyes light up and all sorts of weird stuff. So a lot of people think there's this mystical thing that goes on in Japan, and as long as it's Japanese then it must be better than everything and they use them in Japan, so it must be awesome. I mean, that is the case with some things, but it's certainly not the case with everything. So that's the turbo timer. We're going to install it. It's probably going to take around an hour. Let's get to it.
First, jack up your car, then pop your bonnet and disconnect the negative side of your battery. No negative connection means no accidental sparks, which means no blowing the balls out of things that shouldn't be blown.
Just about everything we're working on is under the steering column. Take off the surrounding plastics to give yourself plenty of room. You can then disconnect the main ignition loom at the key barrel. So all the wiring that we need for the basic functions of the turbo timer exists on this plug. This is almost always in the back of the ignition barrel. Now back in the day, turbo timers had a bit of a reputation of making an easy way to hotwire a car. It's not the case these days so much because cars have much better security systems with key transponders and things like that. Basically, when you remove the key, it just keeps the ignition circuit running for a little bit longer. And so basically everything we need for the turbo timer is in these couple of wires. We figure out what's what, we splice the turbo timer in and we mount it somewhere neatly, and that's it. Then use a multimeter to confirm the wire has the same function in your car. Probe the back of the plug and activate each circuit using the key. So this is the turbo timer system in its entirety. That's the brain, looks much like my brain, and that's the little controller box. that you sit up on the dash that has all your buttons and things to make it work. And that is the wiring loom. So basically we just spliced that into our existing wiring loom. Now we've probed the wires and we've found which one we need. We found the one that has 12 volts when the car is on, and all the turbo timer does is keep sending that 12 volts into the rest of the system so the car keeps running and then kills it just like it would when you turn the key off. This Stanley knife owes me half a thumb. Seriously, that went all the way in there. Like literally up to there, and that still feels weird and there's all scar tissue and I can't bend it properly. So be careful with knives, people.
Never cut towards your penis.
Never, dude, don't cut towards anything you value. And you should
or anyone else's penis. We need to solder, and we're in a car park and there's no power.
Dude, we're not gonna solder.
Why not?
We're not gonna solder. I know you're gonna freak out a little bit, but I was talking to Turbo Yoda, and he doesn't solder anything. He does full engine wiring looms and he doesn't solder. And he stopped soldering years ago and he says the best thing he ever did.
Does he use shrimps?
What?
Does he use shrimps?
What's a shrimp?
It's a prawn, mate.
Why would he use a shrimp?
Does he crimp?
Oh! Yeah, he crimps. And the reason is, because solder's done with heat, that can actually be unreliable because it can get brittle and it can break, and that way your connections don't work anymore. So he crimps stuff and never has problems at all. So we today are going to crimp.
We haven't really done that before, Martin, because for the last 5 or 6 years we've been talking about how good soldering is.
I love soldering, I'm still a big fan, but he has a good point. In engine bays and in cars when things are getting hot and moving around, you actually don't want stuff that's been heated up and then gotten brittle to break. And then crimp is actually, in some ways, more reliable. So we're going to do it, and we're going to do it today. It's going to be mad.
Shrimp, Martin. Throw another shrimp onto Cheryl.
Poor Cheryl.
With our power, earth and ignition wires identified, we can strip them back and attach our turbo timer wires. Remember, you aren't breaking the circuit like you would with an alarm, you're just adding another one to it.
As we're just enjoying Singapore's heat, sweating our balls off, 3 wires connected. There's 2 on circuits on this car, and there's also a 12 volt constant circuit, and there's also a ground wire. That's all we've got left to do. We're going to find a good spot to earth the whole system. We're going to tape it all up so it's neat, and then we're going to turn it on and it's going to work and it's going to be mad.
Remember to heat shrink or tape up your connections. If they aren't insulated, your car won't go.
It's tough working under the Singapore sun, which is about as hot as a donkey in a G-string, and that's hot.
I'd love to stay here and talk more, but I'm absolutely melting, dude.
I can see sweat
I have so
dribbling
much
out of your hole.
butt crack sweat, it's disgusting.
That's gross.
I'm like, all of me that's not holding this camera is covered in sunshine.
Give me that. You're disgusting.
We're moving the car to some much needed shade. A safety feature on turbo timers is that they'll only work when the handbrake is on. This stops runaway cars from rolling down a hill and running over the penis of the endangered furry sperm whale rat, which for some reason is laying on the road at that particular time.
Basically everything goes back together. Just need to put a safety circuit on. It operates by either being connected to the park switch on an auto or a manual. You can use the handbrake circuit, and it just basically means that if the handbrakes drop, the car will turn off straight away, so you can't drive it with no keys in it, which is dangerous.
I haven't seen that before on a turbo timer. Have you?
Seen it on a couple of different things, because basically they don't want, obviously they don't want someone to steal your car, that's the big one, but also if you get in it and forget and go to move your car or something with no keys and it goes through an intersection and then the thing dies, it's kind of dangerous. So that's the whole point. All that does is says, as soon as the handbrake's down, it sends a signal down here which kills the turbo timer and the car stops straight away. So just gotta plug that into the handbrake and we're done.
Next up, we need to mount the turbo timer display up on the dash. It comes with double-sided tape which should last longer than the Planet. We can hide the wiring for it by removing some of the dash trim.
So as you can see, this is a really simple install and something that's really easy to get your head around if you're new to doing mods to your car. At its most basic level, it's just 3 wires. 1 wire to a power source, 1 wire to the ignition circuit, and 1 wire to ground it. It is important that you use the safety features that come with it and that you make sure you insulate everything properly.
Okay, so turbo timers 101. Basically, you start your car, you drive around, you get a mad KFC dinner bucket, you go pick up all your mates and do all that kind of stuff. Then once you're done, you park your car, and when you turn your key off, the car keeps running, and it counts down from a minute. And should you not want to wait a whole minute, you can hit power and turn the whole thing off, and the car will die. Done. That's it. But yeah, done, man. Happy days, turbo timery goodness.
Edward, thanks so much for letting us use your car. We've got some madness for you all the way from Australia. Rake loves it because he does. chopped because you'll be chopping every fall with your turbo timer. And a Mighty Mods lanyard can also be used as a sex aid. That's what Marty told me. Actually, Marty's friend Cheryl told me that, but I don't know how that works. Otherwise, you could just hang your keys off it. I'll put it around there. There you go. Nice to meet you.
It's an honour.
It's an honour to hang out with you and enjoy timing your turbo. In Australia, they're illegal, so you're lucky because in Australia we'd get in trouble for that. Installing and working on your car is awesome. That's what Mighty Mods is about. Everything else you said was rubbish. Here's the thing about turbo timers. I'll tell you the good things about them. Number one, there's an extra flashing light in your dash, and some people think that's awesome.
It says turbo, that's a good thing.
It says turbo on it, so a lot of people love putting that when they've got their list of mods on the forums. A lot of people are really socially awkward, and there's actually like a mental disorder where people like to interact with strangers, and so they love getting out of their car, walking out, and then having a stranger come up to them and go, "Excuse me, your car's still running," they're being good citizens, and the person who owns the car goes, "No, it's a turbo," and they think that that's awesome. I think personally it's an absolute scam. Certainly since turbos have been water cooled, go and do some research on it. Just be careful what you read and you'll see. I wanted to find out for myself, so I spoke to 20 different mechanics, engineers, journalists, people who've been in the industry for a very long time. 100% of them either use the word rubbish, scam, waste of time. It's seen as a kid's toy that is a joke. The people that I spoke to include Andrew Hawkins, Motive DVD, Mechanical Stig, Turbo Yoda, Dose Vader. We're talking about people who have been doing this for a living. I mean, these guys build turbos, that's what they do. They specifically, Turbo Yoda, when I asked him, just said, "This is not the rubbish you're looking for."
So the verdict on turbo timers is?
The verdict from professionals is that they're absolute rubbish and they're a marketing scam to try and make money. That's what professionals say. People actually use them. If you want it, put it in. It's fun, it's cool, and it is your car. You can do whatever you like, but don't be putting it in there thinking that it's going to have some greater benefit. If you really feel like you need to let your car cool down, just drive slowly for the first, the last minute driving home.
And that is honestly, with every turbo car I've ever owned, that is honestly exactly what I do.
Yeah.
For the last minute, just take it easy, let everything cool down again, let the heat escape, and that's done. You will not cook a turbo or an engine doing that.
And one of the things that Turbo Yoda said, which I think was really interesting, is he said a lot of people think it's just the oil that's cooling it down and that stops running, but in fact, it's the water that's cooling down the turbo, and it actually keeps cycling through even after your car's turned off. So that's kind of debunked that whole thing of, Anyway, I would never run one. I'm not going to run one. I'm also not going to be on boost and then park immediately. You shouldn't be boosting around your own neighbourhood and then giving us all a bad name anyway. So just be cool for the last couple of minutes if you really believe it's going to damage. And from here, Martin, let's leave it to the forums to have the final say.
That's right.
Mighty Car Mods, you can get these shirts we're wearing at the Mighty Car Mods shop. Keep up to date with us on Facebook, which is facebook.com/Mighty Car Mods. Singapore, it's a beautiful town, beautiful cars, beautiful people.
Dude,
not this guy.
Let's go eat some Singaporean tofu noodles.
Dude, that is gonna be delicious. I'm gonna get the most stinking wet, mad tofu thing you can imagine.
Like proper dirty,
like proper big chunks
noodles
of tofu and prawn legs and eggshell.
You're in an Evo, mate. I mean, you're not. You're in a Lancer. How do you feel about being in a Lancer?
As all of my friends at the CJ Lancer Club would know, I love them. I took my Forester to a Lancer meet recently, and I sat in an Evo, and I could imagine myself owning one very nicely.
I'm going to say I like this one, and I want it.
You like this one?
I like it. I like working on it. I like it's all simple and mad and works, and it's all Jap.
That's all right. The question is though, Martin, it's like, would you get an Evo 10 or would you get an MY12 STI?
I get an Evo 10.
Would you?
Yep.
I think I would too, but then part of me feels like I wouldn't.